Welcome to a series that we call The End of Times, where we go through the book of Revelation verse by verse to try and understand what it is we can expect to happen in the prophetic time that Jesus refers to as the end of the age. And as we've gone through these episodes, we spent the first two episodes kind of going over why do we know that we're in that season and how we can know that. And then we got into Revelation chapter 1, verse 1. And then we've been going through this. Now we kind of looked at what is Jesus like and what messages he had for the churches. And then finally, after those messages were finished, John was taken up in the Spirit into the literal throne room of God. And we looked around the last episode on what this throne room looks like and what God sitting on his throne looks like. And right as we ended that particular episode, we were introduced to 4 living creatures, and that's where we're at right now. I wanted to stop there because those 4 living creatures are very significant and they're pretty darn interesting. So we want to kind of take a look at what are these 4 living creatures. So we're just going to pick it up in Revelation 4, verse 6. Before the throne there was a sea of glass like crystal, and in the midst of the throne and around the throne were 4 living creatures full of eyes in front and in back. The first living creature was like a lion, the second living creature like a calf, the third living creature had a face like a man, and the fourth living creature was like a flying eagle. And the 4 living creatures each had 6 wings, were full of eyes all around and within, and they do not rest day or night, saying, Holy, 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 the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. So what are these 4 living creatures? Now, let's start with the word living creature. Now, John uses the word in Greek zoa, which means a living thing. It's like it's taking something living and trying to somehow explain it. It's also similar to the word animal, and zoa is eventually where our root word zoo came from. So he's saying these are just some living creatures. They're alive. They're living. He can't quite say what they are. So he refers to them as Zoa. He also says that they have 4 different faces. One like a lion, one like a calf, one like a man, and one like an eagle. And then he says that they have eyes all around. Now, I want to pause there because the word around, all around, is kaiklethin, which is a Greek word meaning in a circle. They don't have just eyes everywhere. What it means is they have eyes in the front, the side, and the back. They have eyes all around, like in a band, also meaning completely around. And then it says they have eyes from within, and that word means coming from inside, meaning there's somehow, I'm not really sure exactly what John is seeing here, whether the eyes are inset as well, or if they're just literally coming from inside. And day and night, they never stop singing and praising the Lord. It's really pretty fantastic what it is they're doing. But what are they? And what do they do? Do they just sing? Is that what they do? Well, there's all sorts of, let's talk about what they look like first. There's all sorts of opinions on when you read a description of what something looks like to interpret what that actually looks like. And there's a lot of art that's been done with these 4 living creatures, trying to understand exactly what these are. So there's obviously going to be many opinions on what they literally look like. But there are a few other places in the Bible that give us descriptions of these creatures. This isn't the only time these 4 living creatures are mentioned. So we're going to start by going back to Isaiah 6. Isaiah was written roughly 600 years before John. And in Isaiah 6, verse 1, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne. So he is being given a glimpse in the throne room of God. High and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above it stood seraphim. Now, seraphim is a word to describe a symbolic creature, meaning it's another word for creature. Now, of course, Isaiah is speaking in Hebrew and not Greek, so he uses the word seraphim, which is like a symbolic creature. Each one had 6 wings, just like John's. With 2, he covered his face. With 2, he covered his feet. And with 2, he flew. And one cried to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. So there they are. Obviously they don't stop. There they are again. And the posts of the door were shaken by the voice of him who cried out, and the house was filled with smoke. So they're just blazing up the place. Then I said, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a live coal, which he had taken from the tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth with it and said, Behold, this has touched your lips, for iniquity is taken away, and your sin purged. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Who shall I send, and who shall go before us? Then I said, Here am I, send me. So Isaiah is looking at the throne room of God, and what's interesting, and I want to come back to this, is that one of them took a live coal from what Isaiah refers to the altar, and he touched his lips with it and told him his iniquity is taken away and his sin is purged. And then, of course, this is when Isaiah steps up and says, Send me, God, I will do your bidding. So that's not the only time we see it. So I think the best place, in my opinion, is Ezekiel gives a very big description of these creatures, because here, both John and Isaiah, they look into the throne room and they see the throne of God, and they see these 4 living creatures around the throne of God. Ezekiel gets really into it. And again, Ezekiel also written 570 years before John was even born. So we're going to read the entire chapter of Ezekiel 1, because that's all we talk about. This whole chapter is these 4 creatures, and I think it gives us an awesome description of what they really are. We're going to pick it up in 1 verse 3. The word of the Lord came expressly to Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Chebar, and the hand of the Lord was upon him there. Then I looked, and behold, a whirlwind was coming out of the north. Now, I want to pause there for a second, because when God's about to show up here, number one, if you look at the book of Job, which is the oldest book in the Bible and maybe the oldest complete text on the planet, that's how God shows up as well. And there's definitely something about which direction the winds are coming from, and we'll come back to that later. A great cloud with raging fire engulfing itself, and brightness was all around it, and radiated out of its midst like the color of amber out of the midst of the fire. So here we are, coming like a blaze again. Also from within it came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man. They had a likeness of a man. Each one had 4 faces, and each one had 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and the soles of their feet were like the soles of calf's feet. They sparkled like the color of burnished bronze. Now I want to stop there for a second, because this says they each had those 4 faces, whereas in John and Isaiah describe them as having different faces. They each had a certain face, but it was different. So these are the same creatures, but why is it that he sees 4 faces? They had the hands of a man under their wings on their 4 sides, and each of the 4 had faces and wings. Their wings touched one another. The creatures did not turn when they went, but each one went straight forward. As for the likeness of their faces, each had the face of a man. Each of the 4 had the face of a lion on the right side. Each of the 4 had the face of an ox on the left side, and each of the 4 had the face of an eagle. Thus were their faces. Their wings were stretched upward. 2 wings of each one touched one another, and 2 covered their bodies. So again, a very similar description of what they're doing with their wings, as well as in Isaiah. And each one went straight forward. They went wherever the Spirit wanted to go, and they did not turn when they went. So what's taking place here, and the reason that Ezekiel is seeing 4 faces and the rest of them are seeing is you have the throne of God, and it is surrounded by 4 creatures, and they're all facing in and they're all facing out with the same faces. So if you have a stationary throne room like John and Isaiah see, where it's just literally a stationary throne room, and you looked at these 4 creatures, you would see 4 different faces. What Ezekiel is seen as it's like this burning whirlwind that's flying around him, coming from the north, and it's literally encircling him. So and it says they do not turn. So everywhere the Spirit of God goes, so everywhere this throne room of God goes, they do not turn. So if it's literally like a whirlwind, and if it's surrounding you like fire, when you see it this direction, they all have a certain face. When you see them this direction, they all have a certain face. So as it rotates around, and it is clearly moving around him, and it says that it's moving because he's describing what it's like as it moves, that then he sees the four faces. Let's go on. As for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire. Now there's that burning coals of fire again. And like the appearance of torches, fire was going back and forth among the living creatures. The fire was bright, and out of the fire were lightning, and the living creatures ran back and forth in appearance like a flash of lightning. Now as I looked at the living creatures, behold, a wheel was on the earth beside each living creature. Now this wheel is pretty interesting. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this. We can probably talk about this wheel all day. But ultimately, what I believe is, he says the appearance of the wheel and their works was like the color of beryl. So he talks about the word appearance here is another word for workmanship. It's clearly some sort of creation. God created his throne room, and God created whatever this thing is. And it's clearly something that it's flying around him like a whirlwind. And what I believe is taking place is this is the throne room of God moving about the earth, and God's kind of describing what this throne room looks like as it's not up in heaven, it's moving around him. When they went towards any one of four directions. They did not turn aside when they went. As for their rims, now it's kind of around their head, they were so high, they were awesome, and their rims were full of eyes all around the four of them. When the living creatures went, the wheels went beside them. And when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. So everywhere the Spirit goes, they go. Wherever the Spirit wanted to go, they went, because there the Spirit went, and the wheels were lifted together with them. For the Spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. So the Spirit of the living creatures is literally within the throne room of God. The throne room of God fills the Spirit of these living creatures. When those went, these went. When those stood, these stood. And when those were lifted up from the earth, these wheels were lifted up together with them. For the Spirit of living creatures was in the wheels. The likeness of the firmament above the head of the living creatures was like the color of an awesome crystal stretched out over their heads. Now we're kind of getting into those crystals again, just like John described. And under the firmament, their wings spread out straight, one toward another. Each one had two, which covered one side, and each one had two, which covered the other side of the body. When they went, I heard the noise of their wings like the noise of many waters, like the voice of the Almighty, a tumult like the noise of an army. And when they stood still, they let down their wings. So that's kind of what John and Isaiah, they're just standing still, so their wings are down. A voice came from above the firmament that was over their heads. Whenever they stood, they let down their wings. And above the firmament over their heads was the likeness of a throne, in appearance like a sapphire stone, just like John said. On the likeness of the throne was the likeness with the appearance of a man high above it, just like John said. Also from the appearance of his waist upward, I saw, as it were, the color of amber, with the appearance of fire all around, just like John said, within it even. And from the appearance of his waist and downward, I saw, as it were, the appearance of fire with brightness all around, like the appearance of a rainbow, just like John said. In a cloud on a rainy day, so was the appearance of the brightness all around it. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of God. And as we talked about that throne room last time, this is exactly the same description. It's just it's on earth. It comes down to earth, and it can move wherever the Spirit goes. Those four creatures will be there. So what is it? What do they do? Well, they're clearly part of the creation of the throne of God. What I think they are, some kind of guardian of the throne of God, and the Spirit of God surrounding it on all sides, literally. Everywhere God goes, these go. They are literally worshiping Him everywhere He goes, and they're part of that worship as well. Wherever God is, there is worship taking place. Wherever that throne is, worship is happening. And that's really what these creatures are all about. So we're going to jump on into 9 because I do want to finish chapter 4 of Revelation so we can get into the opening of the scroll next time. So we're going to pick up in chapter 9. Plus, the creatures aren't done quite yet. Whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him who sits on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders, which we talked about last time, fall down before him who sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, "You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created." What an awesome glimpse into heaven. Man, just super powerful image of what the throne of God does. And these 4 living creatures, they're part of that throne room. It's just really incredible. So next time we're going to get straight into who is worthy to break the seals of the scroll. Love to hear your thoughts on these 4 creatures. I know there's probably all sorts of things I didn't say about them that there's out there. But if you like this video, click like and subscribe. Feel called to support our channel through Patreon, that link's below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so never hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.